The wind howled through the pine trees like a wounded animal that winter evening. John Carter stood at his kitchen window, watching the snow come down in thick, heavy sheets. He'd lived in these Montana mountains for nearly 15 years now, ever since he'd retired from the military, and he knew what a real storm looked like. This was going to be a bad one. He checked his watch. Almost 7 in the evening. The fire in his wood stove crackled nicely, filling the small cabin with warmth. John had just finished his dinner, a simple meal of beef stew and bread, and was thinking about settling in with a book when he heard something that didn't belong to the storm. It was a soft thud, like something bumping against wood. Then another sound, almost like a whimper. John set down his coffee cup and listened carefully. Years in the service had trained him to notice things that were out of place, sounds that didn't fit the natural rhythm of his surroundings. There it was again, coming from somewhere behind the cabin, maybe near the woodshed. John pulled on his heavy coat and grabbed the flashlight from beside the door. His rifle stayed in its cabinet for now. Could be a deer seeking shelter from the storm, or maybe a bear that hadn't quite settled in for winter. He stepped out into the cold, the wind immediately biting at his face. The snow was already ankle-deep and still falling. John made his way around the side of the cabin, his boots crunching through the fresh powder. He swept the flashlight beam across his property, lighting up the woodshed, the old truck under its tarp, the stack of firewood he'd been working through. Then the light caught something that made him stop cold. There was a person huddled behind the woodshed, a woman pressed against the back wall, her arms wrapped around herself. She was shaking so hard he could see it even from 20 feet away. "Hey there," John called out, keeping his voice calm and steady. "You okay?" The woman looked up at him, and even in the harsh flashlight beam, John could see the terror in her eyes. She tried to push herself further back against the wall, as if she could somehow disappear into the wood itself. John took a slow step forward, then another. That's when he saw her face clearly. The left side was swollen, her eye nearly shut. Her lip was split and crusted with dried blood. More bruises colored her cheekbone in shades of purple and black. She was wearing just a thin sweater over a t-shirt, jeans that were soaked from the snow, and sneakers that looked like they'd fallen apart from running. "I'm not gonna hurt you," John said quietly. He'd seen injuries like that before too many times. "You're safe here. I promise." The woman didn't respond, just stared at him with that one good eye, her whole body trembling. John could see she was maybe in her mid-20s with dark hair plastered to her face from the snow. She had to have been out in this storm for a while. Her lips had a bluish tint that he didn't like at all. "My name's John. I live here in this cabin. You must be freezing." He gestured toward his home. "Why don't you come inside? Get warm, no questions, no pressure. Just some heat and maybe some hot food." She shook her head slightly, a tiny movement, but didn't speak. "Listen, I know you're scared. I can see that. But you're going to freeze to death out here if you stay much longer. That's just a fact." John kept his distance, didn't move any closer. "I'm a 62-year-old man who lives alone. I've got no interest in causing you any trouble. Just want to help." The wind picked up, sending a blast of snow and ice crystals swirling around them both. The woman let out a small gasp and hunched down further. John could see her starting to lose the fight to stay conscious. Hypothermia was setting in. "Okay, here's what I'm going to do," he said, making his voice firm but kind. "I'm going to walk back to my cabin. The door will be unlocked. You can come in whenever you're ready. There's a fire, there's food, there's safety. Your choice." He turned and walked back toward his cabin, but slowly, giving her time to think. Behind him he heard nothing but the wind. John reached his door, opened it, and left it standing wide despite the cold air rushing in. Then he went to his linen closet and pulled out warm blankets, the thick fleece ones he saved for the coldest nights. He was just setting them on the couch when he heard footsteps on his porch. Slow, hesitant steps. The woman appeared in the doorway like a ghost, snow-covered and shaking. She looked around the cabin with quick, nervous glances like a wild animal checking for predators. "Come on in," John said gently. "Close that door behind you before we both freeze." She stepped inside and pushed the door shut. Then she just stood there, dripping melted snow onto his floor, her arms still wrapped tight around herself. John moved slowly, like he was dealing with something fragile that might break. He picked up one of the blankets and held it out to her. "Here, this'll help." She took it with shaking hands and wrapped it around her shoulders. Up close now, John could see the full extent of her injuries. Besides the obvious damage to her face, There were bruises around her neck in the shape of fingers. Her wrists had marks too, like she'd been grabbed hard enough to leave impressions. One of her hands was swollen, possibly a broken finger or two. "I've got a bathroom right through there." John pointed to a door on the left. "Hot water works fine. There's towels and I can find you some dry clothes. Might be too big, but they'll be warm." The woman looked at him for a long moment, seeming to assess whether she could trust him. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Take your time," John said. "I'll heat up some soup." She moved toward the bathroom, still wrapped in the blanket, and closed the door softly behind her. John heard the lock click and felt relieved. She should feel safe enough to lock the door. That was good. He went to his kitchen and started heating up leftover vegetable soup on the stove. While it warmed, he found a pair of his old sweatpants, a warm flannel shirt, and thick socks. He set them outside the bathroom door with a gentle knock. "Clean clothes out here for you," he called through the door. A quiet "thank you" came from inside. It was the first time he'd heard her voice. It was rough, scratchy, like her throat was damaged. John returned to the kitchen and poured the soup into a bowl. He made some toast too, buttered it heavily. By the time he'd set everything on his small dining table, the bathroom door opened. She emerged wearing his clothes, which hung loose on her small frame. She'd pulled her wet hair back, and without the snow and grime, he could see she was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 24, 25 at most. The bruises looked even worse now, stark against her olive skin. "Sit down," John gestured to the table. "Eat something." She sat carefully, like her body hurt everywhere, and picked up the spoon with her less injured hand. The first sip of soup seemed to surprise her, and she took another, then another. John watched her eat most of the bowl in silence, not pushing for conversation. When she'd finished and was working on the toast, John spoke quietly. "I'm going to get my first aid kit. Some of those cuts should be cleaned properly." She looked up at him, fear flashing across her face again. "I'm not a doctor, but I learned basic field medicine in the Army. Won't hurt you, just want to make sure nothing gets infected." He paused. "You can say no. It's your choice." After a moment, she nodded slightly. John retrieved his medical kit from the hall closet and returned to the table. He worked slowly and carefully, cleaning the cut on her lip with antiseptic, checking her swollen eye, examining her hand. She winced but didn't pull away. "This finger might be broken," he said, gently touching her pinky. "Same with this one. They should be looked at by a real doctor." "No hospitals," she whispered hoarsely, the first real words she'd spoken to him. "Okay," John said simply. He didn't argue. "No hospitals." He finished his work in silence, then gathered up the medical supplies. The woman was still sitting at his table, staring at nothing in particular. The shock was probably wearing off now, reality setting in. John was just putting the kit away when light swept across his front window. Headlights moving slowly along the road that passed near his property. In this weather at this time of night, that was unusual. His cabin was the last one on this particular road, and his nearest neighbor was 3 miles back. The woman saw the lights too. She shot to her feet so fast the chair almost fell over, her face going white despite the bruises. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." The vehicle crawled past, the headlights sweeping through the trees. It was a truck, dark-colored, moving at a careful pace, like someone searching for something. Or someone. John moved to the window and watched the truck continue down the road until it disappeared around a bend. But he had a feeling it would be back. "He's looking for me," the woman said behind him. Her voice was shaking as badly as her hands had been earlier. "He's going to find me." John turned to face her. "Who is he?" "Derek." She wrapped her arms around herself again, that same protective gesture. "My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, I ran. I shouldn't have run. He said if I ever tried to leave." She didn't finish the sentence. "He did that to you?" John gestured to her face, her injuries. She nodded, tears starting to spill down her cheeks. "Tonight was the worst. He was so angry. I thought he was going to kill me this time. So I went out the bathroom window while he was getting another beer. Just ran. Didn't even grab my coat or my phone. I just ran through the woods until I couldn't run anymore, and then I saw your cabin." John listened, his jaw tight. He'd seen domestic violence cases before, knew how dangerous they could be. Knew that the most dangerous time was when someone tried to leave. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya. Maya Rodriguez." "Okay, Maya. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight. That couch pulls out into a bed and you can lock yourself in the spare room if you want. In the morning, we'll figure out next steps, but right now you need rest. He'll come here, Maya said, her voice rising slightly. If he saw any tracks, if he figures out I came this way, he knows every cabin, every house around here. He'll check them all. Then he'll find a locked door and an old man who doesn't take kindly to unexpected visitors. John walked to his gun cabinet and pulled out his rifle. He checked that it was loaded, then set it carefully within easy reach near the door. Maya's eyes went wide. You can't shoot him. That'll just make everything worse. I'm not planning to shoot anyone, John said calmly. But I am planning to make it very clear that you're under my protection, and he needs to move along. There's a difference. He walked over to his couch and started pulling out the bed mechanism. You've been through enough tonight. What you need now is sleep, real sleep, somewhere safe. We can worry about everything else come daylight. Maya watched him work, her expression uncertain, like she couldn't quite believe this was happening. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. John paused and looked at her directly. Because it's the right thing to do, and because nobody deserves what was done to you. Simple as that. He finished setting up the bed and piled it with blankets and pillows. Bathroom's there if you need it. Kitchen's open if you get hungry. I'll be in my room, but I'm a light sleeper. Anything happens, anything at all, you call out and I'll be here in 2 seconds. Maya moved slowly to the couch bed and sat down on the edge. She looked exhausted beyond words, the adrenaline that had kept her moving finally wearing off. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't found your cabin. You're safe here, John told her firmly. That's a promise. Nobody's touching you again. He turned off most of the lights, leaving just a small lamp on in the corner so she wouldn't wake up in complete darkness. Then he went to his own room, but he didn't undress or get into bed. Instead, he sat in the chair by his window, his rifle across his lap, watching the road. The snow continued to fall outside, covering the world in white. John watched and waited because he knew men like Derek. He knew they didn't give up easily, and he knew that before this was over, that truck would be back. But when it came, John Carter would be ready. He'd made a promise to a scared young woman who'd shown incredible courage just by running, just by surviving. And John Carter never broke his promises. The first light of dawn came slowly through the windows, painting everything in shades of gray and blue. John had dozed off and on through the night, but mostly he'd stayed awake, watching. The truck hadn't come back, but that didn't make him feel any better. Men like Derek were patient when they wanted to be. He heard movement from the living room and walked out quietly. Maya was sitting up on the couch bed, her dark hair tangled around her face. She looked even smaller in the morning light, wrapped in one of his blankets like a shield. Morning, John said softly. How'd you sleep? Better than I have in months, Maya admitted. Her voice was still rough, but stronger than last night. I kept waking up thinking I was back there, but then I'd remember where I was and... She trailed off, looking down at her hands. Coffee? John asked, moving toward the kitchen. Please. He made a pot of strong coffee while Maya folded up the blankets. When he brought her a cup, she wrapped both hands around it like she was trying to absorb its warmth. We should talk, John said, settling into his armchair across from her. About what happens next. Maya nodded slowly, taking a sip of coffee. I know I can't stay here forever. It's not fair to you. That's not what I meant. John leaned forward. I meant we need to figure out how to keep you safe. Really safe, not just for a night or two. I don't have anywhere to go, Maya said quietly. My family's back in Arizona. I moved here 8 months ago for a job at the resort. That's where I met Derek. He was a manager there, seemed nice at first. Charming, you know? Bought me flowers, took me to nice dinners. Now, when did it start? John asked. Maya stared into her coffee. About 3 months in. Little things at first. Getting jealous when I talked to other guys at work. Checking my phone. Then he started saying I was dressing too nice, that I was trying to attract attention. One night we argued about it and he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. She touched her wrist unconsciously. He apologized the next day, cried, said it would never happen again. John had heard versions of this story before. They always followed the same pattern. But it did happen again, he said. Yeah, and each time it got worse. He convinced me to quit my job, said he'd take care of me. I was stupid enough to believe him. Once I didn't have my own money anymore, I was trapped. My friends stopped calling because he always had a reason I couldn't see them. I stopped calling my mom because I was ashamed to tell her what my life had become. She looked up at John, Her eyes red. Last night he came home drunk and angry about something at work. Started yelling about how everything was my fault. When I tried to calm him down, he just exploded, hit me harder than he ever had before. Kept hitting me. Then he put his hands around my neck and I thought, this is it. This is how I die. John felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression calm. What made him stop? His phone rang. He let go to answer it and I just ran. Locked myself in the bathroom and climbed out the window. I ran through the woods in the dark until my legs gave out and then I saw the light from your cabin. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't even know how far I ran. Miles, I think. 3 miles, roughly, John said. If you came from town. He owns a gun, Maya said suddenly. Derek keeps it in his truck. He's shown it to me before, said it was for protection. But the way he looked at me last night, I think if that phone hadn't rung, he would have killed me. John was quiet for a moment, processing this information. We need to call the sheriff. Get this documented properly. Maya shook her head firmly. No police. Derek has friends in the department. He's lived here his whole life, everyone knows him. I'm just some girl from Arizona who's been here less than a year. The law's the law, Maya, doesn't matter who you know. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising slightly. 2 months ago I tried to tell someone. A woman at the grocery store saw bruises on my arms and asked if I was okay. I broke down and told her everything. She said she'd help me, that she knew people. Next thing I know, Derek's dragging me out of the store saying his girlfriend's having a mental health episode. The woman just stood there and let him take me. That doesn't mean... He has friends everywhere, John, the local mechanic, the guy who owns the bar, even the pastor at the church. They all think Derek's this great guy. When I tried to leave once before, I made it to a gas station and the owner called Derek to come get me. Said I looked confused and wasn't making sense. She laughed bitterly. Derek thanked him for looking out for his troubled girlfriend. John rubbed his face with both hands. Small-town dynamics could be complicated, especially when someone had deep roots. Okay, no police for now, but we need a plan. They spent the next hour talking through options while John made breakfast. Maya helped him cook eggs and toast, moving carefully around the kitchen. She flinched every time a sound came from outside, every creak of the old cabin settling. I have some money saved, John said as they ate. Not a fortune, but enough to get you a bus ticket somewhere far from here. Fresh start. He'd find me, Maya said flatly. Derek's obsessive. He's already tracked me down twice when I tried to stay at motels. He has this app on my phone that lets him see where I am. Your phone's back at his place, right? Yeah, dead battery probably. Good, that means he can't track you right now. But we should assume he's going to search everywhere he can think of. John pushed his empty plate aside. Question is, does he know about this cabin specifically? Maybe. He does hunting trips with his buddies. They drive all over these mountains. As if on cue, they heard the sound of an engine outside. Maya went pale, her fork clattering onto her plate. John stood up and moved to the window. Sure enough, a dark blue truck was coming up his driveway. Snow crunching under its tires. The same truck from last night. Stay here, John said firmly. Don't come to the door. Don't let him see you. Understand? Maya nodded, already moving away from the window. John grabbed his rifle from where he'd left it by the door and stepped out onto his porch. The cold morning air bit at his face as he watched the truck pull to a stop about 30 feet from his cabin. The engine shut off and a man climbed out. Derek Sullivan was in his early 30s, built like someone who spent time in the gym. He wore expensive outdoor gear and boots that probably cost more than John's entire wardrobe. His face had that particular look John had seen before on certain types of men, the kind who thought the world owed them something. Morning, Derek called out, putting on a friendly smile, but his eyes were hard, calculating. Sorry to bother you so early. Little early for social calls, John replied evenly, keeping the rifle visible but pointed at the ground. Yeah, well, I'm looking for someone. My girlfriend. She ran off last night during the storm. I'm real worried about her. Derek took a few steps closer. She's not well, if you know what I mean. Mental health issues. Sometimes she gets confused, doesn't know what she's doing. That's so, John said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, name's Maya. Small girl, dark hair. If she came by here, she might have said some things that aren't true. She does that when she's having an episode. Derek's smile stayed fixed on his face. You seen anyone like that? Can't say I have, John lied smoothly. Been snowed in since yesterday evening. Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. Mind if I take a look around, just to make sure she didn't try to take shelter in one of your outbuildings or something? She could be hurt out there. I do mind, actually. This is private property, come on, man. I'm just trying to find my girl. You'd do the same if it was someone you cared about, right? Derek took another step forward. John raised the rifle slightly, not pointing it at Derek, but making the message clear. Property line's right where you're standing. I suggest you stay on that side of it. Derek's friendly mask slipped for just a second, showing something cold and angry underneath. Then he recovered, holding up his hands. Hey, no problem. No problem at all. Just trying to help my girlfriend, but I get it. Privacy and all that. Sheriff's office is back in town, John said. They can organize a proper search if you're that worried. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Derek started backing toward his truck, but his eyes never left John. You know, I don't think I've seen you around before. You new to the area? Been here 15 years. Huh. Funny we've never met. Derek opened his truck door. I know pretty much everyone around here. People tend to help each other out in these parts. Look out for each other. It's a real tight community, if you know what I mean. The threat was barely veiled. John just stared at him, not responding. Well, if you do happen to see Maya, give me a call, yeah? Derek pulled out a business card and set it on his truck's hood, weighing it down with a rock. That's got my cell number. Anytime, day or night. I really need to find her, make sure she's okay. I'll keep that in mind. Derek climbed into his truck but didn't start the engine right away. He sat there for a long moment staring at the cab and at John, like he was trying to see through the walls. Finally, he started the truck and began backing down the driveway. John didn't move until the truck was completely out of sight and he couldn't hear the engine anymore. Then he grabbed the business card, went inside, and locked the door behind him. Maya was standing in the middle of the living room, her whole body shaking. He knows. He knows I'm here. He suspects, John corrected, but he doesn't know for sure. And he's not getting in here, Maya, I promise you that. You don't understand what he's like. He won't just give up. He'll wait and watch, and the second he gets a chance, then we don't give him a chance. John set the rifle down and picked up his phone. I'm calling someone. A friend of mine from my army days. His name's Tom Bradley, and he's the sheriff 2 counties over. Good man, honest. He'll know what to do. But you said... I said we wouldn't call the local police, and we won't. But Tom's different. He doesn't owe anyone around here any favors, and he's helped me out before with difficult situations. John dialed the number and waited. After 4 rings, a gruff voice answered. Tom Bradley. Tom, it's John Carter. I need your help with something. There was a pause. John, haven't heard from you in almost a year. What's going on? I've got a situation up at my cabin. Domestic violence case. Woman showed up here last night running from her boyfriend. He just came by looking for her, and I don't like the way this is playing out. Tom's voice immediately shifted into professional mode. Is she safe right now? For the moment. But the boyfriend's got connections in town, and I don't trust the local response. Give me the details. John explained the situation while Maya listened, her eyes wide. When he finished, Tom was quiet for a moment. Okay, here's what I know. Derek Sullivan, right? I've heard that name before. He's had 2 previous domestic violence complaints filed against him. Both times the women dropped the charges before it went anywhere. Word is he pressured them or paid them off, maybe both. Maya closed her eyes and John saw her shoulders slump. She'd known, but hearing it confirmed made it real. So he's done this before, John said. Yeah, and guys like that, they escalate. If he put hands on her throat like you said, that's a huge red flag. Statistics show that's one of the strongest predictors that it'll turn lethal eventually. That's what I was afraid of. Look, officially, she needs to come in and file a report, get a restraining order, document everything. But I know that's not always practical, and it sounds like your local department might not handle it right. Tom sighed. Unofficially, you keep her there and safe until we can figure something out. I'll make some calls, see what I can do from my end. Maybe I can get the state police involved if needed. Appreciate it, Tom. John, be careful. Men like this, when they feel like they're losing control of someone, they get dangerous. Real dangerous. Don't take any chances. I won't. After hanging up, John turned to Maya. Tom's going to help. He'll work on this from his end, see what legal options we have. How long will that take? Maya asked quietly. I don't know. Maybe a few days, maybe longer. And what do I do until then? Just hide here? For now, yes. It's not ideal, but it's safe. John moved to the kitchen and started making more coffee. In the meantime, I'm going to teach you a few things. What kind of things? John turned to face her. How to protect yourself. Basic self-defense. How to use the CB radio in case something happens and you need to call for help. Where the spare keys are. Escape routes from the cabin. He paused. I'm not saying this to scare you, but Derek's not going to give up. We saw that this morning. So you need to be prepared for anything. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders slightly, and John saw something shift in her expression. Not confidence exactly, but determination. The same quality that had made her run through the woods in a snowstorm to escape. Okay, she said. Teach me. They spent the rest of the morning going over basics. John showed her how to lock and unlock all the doors and windows, where he kept emergency supplies, how to work the CB radio. He taught her a few simple self-defense moves, ways to break free if someone grabbed her. The goal isn't to win a fight, John explained. It's to create an opening so you can run. Always run if you can. Your safety is more important than pride or proving anything. Maya practiced the moves slowly, wincing when certain motions pulled at her injuries. But she didn't complain, didn't ask to stop. Around noon they heard another vehicle. Both of them froze, then moved to the window together. But this time it was a sheriff's SUV from Tom's county. The relief John felt was immediate. Tom Bradley climbed out, a big man in his 50s with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. John opened the door and shook his hand. That was fast, John said. I was already heading this direction for another call. Figured I'd stop by, see the situation firsthand. Tom looked past John to where Maya stood nervously by the couch. His expression softened immediately. You must be Maya. I'm Sheriff Bradley. John called me this morning. Maya nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. Can we talk? Tom asked gently. Just you and me? I promise I'm here to help, not make things worse. Maya looked at John, who gave her an encouraging nod. Tom's one of the good ones. You can trust him. She and Tom sat at the kitchen table while John gave them space, though he stayed within earshot. For the next 20 minutes, Tom took Maya's statement, asking careful questions and taking notes. His voice stayed calm and kind throughout, never pushing her too hard. When they finished, Tom came over to where John was standing by the window. It's bad, Tom said quietly. Worse than I thought from your call. The throat compression alone is enough to arrest him, but like you said, local jurisdiction makes it complicated. What are our options? Short term. Keep her here and keep her safe. I'm going to talk to some people, see if I can get this escalated to state level. With his history and the severity of the latest assault, we might be able to move on it faster. But these things take time, and in the meantime, Tom looked at the cabin, then back at John. In the meantime, you watch your back. Derek came by once already. He'll come again. After Tom left, the cabin felt quieter somehow. Maya sat on the couch staring at nothing. You did the right thing, John told her. Talking to Tom, getting it on record. That's the first step. It doesn't feel like enough, Maya said. Derek's still out there. He's still free, and I'm still trapped, just in a different place. John understood what she meant. Safety was important, critical even, but it wasn't the same as freedom. We'll figure this out, he promised. One day at a time. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, John caught sight of a familiar truck parked on the road about half a mile away. Just sitting there, engine probably running to keep warm. Watching. Derek was playing the waiting game now. And John knew it was only a matter of time before he made his next move. 3 days passed in an uneasy rhythm. Maya helped John with daily chores, learning to split firewood and cook simple meals. She was getting stronger, the bruises fading from purple to yellow-green. But the fear in her eyes hadn't diminished. If anything, it had grown sharper. Derek's truck appeared on the road at least twice a day, always at different times. Morning, afternoon, late evening. Sometimes it just sat there for an hour or more. Other times it would drive past slowly, then circle back. He never came to the cabin again, but his presence was a constant weight hanging over them. He's trying to break me, Maya said one morning while washing dishes. Make me so scared that I'll just give up and come out. John was at the table cleaning his rifle for the 3rd time that week. Is it working? Maya was quiet for a moment. Sometimes. At night I have dreams where he gets in somehow. I wake up and have to check all the locks 3 times before I can breathe again. She dried a plate with more force than necessary. But then I remember what my life was like before. walking on eggshells every second, never knowing what would set him off. And I think I'd rather be scared here than go back to that. That's good, John said. Hold on to that feeling. How long can this last, though? He's not going to just get bored and leave. Tom's working on it. He called yesterday, said he's got the state police looking into Derek's background. Apparently there's a woman from 2 years ago who might be willing to testify about what he did to her. Maya turned to look at him. Really? Don't get your hopes up yet. These things take time. But it's progress. That afternoon, Maya was reading one of John's old paperback novels when they heard multiple vehicles coming up the road. Not just one truck this time, but several. John moved to the window and felt his stomach tighten. 3 trucks were pulling up to his property, and Derek was climbing out of the first one. 2 other men got out of the remaining vehicles, both of them looking like they'd come straight from a bar. One was stumbling slightly, and John could hear loud laughter even through the closed windows. Maya, go to the back bedroom. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you. She was already moving, her face pale. John heard the bedroom door close and lock as he grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch. Derek was standing with his friends, all 3 of them looking up at the cabin. They'd been drinking, that was obvious. One of the men was holding a bottle, taking swigs from it openly. John, Derek called out, his voice too loud, too jovial. Thought we'd come by for a neighborly visit. Brought some friends. This is Kyle and that's Brandon. The 2 men waved mockingly. Kyle, the one with the bottle, called out, Heard you're hiding Derek's girlfriend. That's not very friendly. Time for you all to leave, John said calmly, though his heart was pounding. 1 drunk man with a grudge was dangerous. 3 of them was a serious problem. We're not leaving without Maya, Derek said, and the false friendliness dropped from his voice like a mask. I know she's in there. I've been watching. No one's left that cabin in days except you, and you're always alone. Don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying. Derek shouted suddenly, his face flushing red. She's mine, and you have no right to keep her from me. Maya, get out here right now. Brandon laughed. Maybe we should just go in and get her. John raised the rifle, not pointing it directly at anyone but making his intentions clear. Nobody's going anywhere near this cabin. First person who tries is going to have a very bad day. You going to shoot all 3 of us? Kyle asked, still grinning. Old man like you? Before we get to that door? Don't have to shoot all 3. Just have to shoot the first one who moves. You want to volunteer? John kept his voice level but firm. I spent 20 years in the service. I know exactly how to handle this rifle, and I will not hesitate to protect my property. The 3 men looked at each other. The alcohol had made them bold but not stupid. They could see John wasn't bluffing. This is crazy, Derek said, but he was backing toward his truck. You're making a big mistake, old man. Big mistake. I've got friends in this town. Important friends. Then call them. Call the sheriff. I'll be happy to explain to law enforcement why 3 drunk men showed up at my property making threats. Come on, Brandon muttered, pulling at Derek's arm. This isn't worth it. We'll figure something else out. They climbed back into their trucks, but Derek rolled down his window before starting the engine. This isn't over. You hear me? Not even close. John stood on his porch until all 3 trucks disappeared down the road. Only then did he lower the rifle. Realizing his hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline, he went inside and knocked on the bedroom door. Maya, they're gone. It's safe. She opened the door slowly. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, but her voice was steady. They're going to keep coming back, aren't they? Probably. This is my fault. You shouldn't have to deal with this. John shook his head firmly. This is Derek's fault, all of it. Don't you dare start thinking otherwise. He moved to the phone. But I'm calling Tom. He needs to know Derek just showed up here with backup, all of them drinking. Tom answered on the second ring, and John filled him in on what had happened. There was a long silence when he finished. That's escalation, Tom said finally. He's getting desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. John, I'm going to be straight with you. I can't officially be there every day watching your place. It's outside my jurisdiction, and I've got my own county to cover. But unofficially, I'm going to start driving by when I can. And I'm putting a rush on getting those state police involved. How long? Could be days, could be a week. I'm pushing as hard as I can, but there's procedures, paperwork. You know how it is. After the call, John found Maya sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked small again, like she had that first night. Hey, John said gently, sitting in his armchair. Talk to me. I keep thinking about leaving, she admitted. Just walking out that door and going back to Derek, at least then you'd be safe. this would all be over. You'd be dead within a month, John said bluntly. Maybe sooner. You know that, right? Maya nodded slowly. Yeah, I know that. Then we keep fighting. Together, that's what we do. John leaned forward. You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who climbed out a bathroom window and ran 3 miles through a snowstorm in the dark. Someone who's getting stronger every day despite everything she's been through. Derek wants you to think you're weak, that you need him. But you're not weak, Maya. You're one of the toughest people I've met. She wiped at her eyes. I don't feel tough. Tough people rarely do. That's the secret. He smiled slightly. You're still here. Still fighting. That's what matters. That evening, Maya insisted on cooking dinner. She made a simple pasta dish with canned sauce, but she put effort into it, adding herbs from John's small collection of spices. They ate together at the table, and for a little while it felt almost normal. Can I ask you something? Maya said as they were finishing. Sure. Why do you live out here alone? No pictures of family, no mention of anyone visiting. Were you ever married? John was quiet for a moment, weighing how much to share. I was, long time ago. Her name was Patricia. We met right after I enlisted, got married too young like people did back then. What happened? Military life happened. I was gone more than I was home. Deployments, training exercises, always somewhere else. Patricia tried to make it work, but after 15 years, she'd had enough. Can't say I blamed her. She deserved someone who was actually there. Do you still talk to her? Christmas cards, mostly. She remarried about 10 years ago. Has grandkids now. I'm happy for her. John pushed his empty plate aside. After the divorce, after I retired, I just wanted somewhere quiet. Somewhere I could hear myself think. Found this place and never looked back. Don't you get lonely? Sometimes. But there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I've got my books, my projects. Tom visits a few times a year. It's enough, he looked at her steadily. Though I'll admit, it's been nice having someone to talk to these past few days. Even under the circumstances. Maya smiled, a real smile this time. I'm glad I found your cabin that night. I don't know what I would have done otherwise. You would have survived somehow. People like you always do. They were washing dishes when John heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Breaking glass coming from the back of the cabin. Get down, he shouted, pushing Maya toward the floor behind the couch. He grabbed his rifle and moved toward the back bedroom where the sound had come from. The window was broken and he could see a bottle lying on the floor with flames starting to spread from it. A Molotov cocktail, amateur but effective. John didn't panic. He ran to the bathroom, grabbed towels, soaked them in the sink, and ran back. He threw the wet towels over the flames, smothering them before they could spread to the curtains or bed. Within 2 minutes, the fire was out, leaving only smoke and the smell of gasoline. Outside, he heard an engine roaring away. Through the broken window, he caught a glimpse of taillights disappearing into the darkness. Maya appeared in the doorway, her face shocked. Did they just... Yeah. John was already on the phone to Tom. They just tried to burn us out. Tom's voice was tight with anger when he answered. I'm on my way. Don't touch anything, it's evidence. And John, call 911, get the local fire department out there just in case. I know you don't trust them, but we need this documented properly. The next hour was chaos. The volunteer fire department arrived, more concerned about checking for hotspots than asking difficult questions. Tom showed up 20 minutes later, his face grim as he examined the broken window and burnt towels. This changes everything, Tom said. This is arson, attempted murder. I don't care about jurisdiction anymore. I'm arresting Derek Sullivan tonight. Can you prove it was him? John asked. I saw his truck, Maya said quietly from the doorway. Everyone turned to look at her. I recognized the sound of the engine when it drove away. He's got a modified exhaust that's really loud. It was definitely his truck. Tom pulled out his radio. That's enough for me. I'm calling for backup and we're bringing him in. But when Tom and 2 state troopers arrived at Derek's house an hour later, it was empty. No truck in the driveway, no lights on inside. According to his neighbors, Derek had packed a bag and left right after dark, saying something about a hunting trip. He ran, Tom told John over the phone later that night. We've got a warrant out for his arrest now, but he's in the wind. Could be anywhere in these mountains. John looked at Maya, who was sitting wrapped in a blanket despite the cabin being warm. The fear was back in her eyes, stronger than ever. What do we do now? John asked. You keep every door and window locked. You keep that rifle loaded, and you don't let her out of your sight. Tom paused. I'm posting a trooper on your road tonight. He'll stay there until we find Derek. But John, if Derek comes back, if he tries anything, you do whatever you have to do to protect yourselves. You understand what I'm saying? I understand. After hanging up, John sat down next to Maya. You heard? She nodded. He's not going to stop, not ever. Not until... She didn't finish the sentence. We're going to get through this, John said. I promise you that. But even as he said it, he wondered if it was a promise he could keep. Derek had escalated from threats to violence, and men like that rarely backed down. They'd taken his control away, exposed him, pushed him into a corner. And cornered animals were the most dangerous kind. John checked the locks one more time, made sure the rifle was loaded and within reach. Outside, he could see the state trooper's car parked on the road, its presence both comforting and ominous. Somewhere out there in the darkness, Derek was watching and waiting, planning his next move, and John knew that when it came, they'd need to be ready for anything. Maya fell asleep eventually, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. But John stayed awake, sitting in his chair by the window, rifle across his lap. The night stretched out before him, full of shadows and uncertainty. He'd made Maya a promise, that she'd be safe, that nobody would hurt her again. And John Carter had never broken a promise in his life. He wasn't about to start now, no matter what it cost him. The wind picked up outside, making the trees creak and groan. Every sound made John's hand tighten on the rifle. Every shadow seemed to move with purpose. Tomorrow they'd figure out their next steps. Tomorrow they'd plan and prepare. But tonight John would keep watch. Tonight he'd be the wall between Maya and the darkness that wanted to swallow her whole. And if Derek came back, if he tried to break through that wall, he'd find out exactly what an old soldier was still capable of when protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves. The night wore on, cold and endless, and John Carter stayed vigilant, keeping his promise 1 hour at a time. The trooper's car stayed parked on the road for 2 days straight, with shifts changing every 12 hours. John felt grateful for the protection, but he also knew it couldn't last forever. The state police had limited resources, and eventually they'd need to pull back. Maya spent most of those 2 days by the window, watching the road like she was waiting for something inevitable. Her bruises had faded even more, but new shadows had appeared under her eyes from lack of sleep. You need to rest, John told her on the second afternoon. Can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see him coming through that window. She hugged herself, still staring outside. It's like I can feel him out there waiting. John understood that feeling. He'd had it during his deployments, that sense of being watched by an enemy you couldn't see. Tom called this morning. They tracked Derek's truck to a campground about 40 miles north. Found it abandoned. Maya turned to look at him. Abandoned? He probably switched vehicles. Could have stolen one or had a friend help him. Either way, they lost his trail. John sat down at the table. But there's good news, too. That woman from 2 years ago, the one Tom mentioned, she came forward officially, filed a detailed statement about what Derek did to her. Combined with your testimony and the arson attack, the prosecutor says they've got a solid case. That doesn't help if they can't find him. They will. Men like Derek, they always mess up eventually. They get too confident, make a mistake. And what if he messes up here? What if his mistake involves coming back with a gun? Maya's voice rose slightly. That trooper can't stay out there forever, John. We both know it. She was right, and they both knew it. That evening, Tom called with the news John had been expecting. I've got to pull the trooper tomorrow morning, Tom said, sounding tired. My captain's already giving me grief about the overtime. But I've got everyone looking for Derek. Every cop in 3 counties has his picture. We've frozen his bank accounts, put alerts on his credit cards. He can't hide forever. How long do you think we have? John asked, keeping his voice low so Maya wouldn't hear. Honestly, I don't know. Could be days, could be weeks. But John, I meant what I said before. If he shows up, you protect yourselves by any means necessary. The law will back you up. After hanging up, John told Maya about the trooper leaving. She took it better than he expected, just nodding slowly like she'd already accepted it as fact. We need a better plan, she said. We can't just sit here waiting for him to make a move. What are you thinking? Maya was quiet for a moment, then looked at him with an expression he hadn't seen before. Determination mixed with something harder, more resolved. I'm thinking I'm tired of being the victim. Tired of running and hiding and being scared. Maybe it's time we take the fight to him instead. Maya, that's not... Hear me out. She moved to sit across from him. Derek thinks I'm weak. He's always thought that. It's why he picked me in the first place. But what if we use that against him? You want to draw him out, John said slowly, understanding where she was going. Not just draw him out. I want to end this. Really end it so I can have my life back. She leaned forward. What if I went into town? Made myself visible. He'd come for me, we both know he would. But we'd be ready this time. You, me, and Tom with backup nearby. John shook his head. Too dangerous. Too many things could go wrong. More dangerous than waiting here like sitting ducks? John, he already tried to burn us out. Next time he might succeed. Or he might wait until you're outside and I'm alone. Or he might just shoot through the windows. Her voice cracked slightly. I can't live like this anymore. Jumping at every sound. Terrified every second. I'd rather face him and get it over with. And if something goes wrong? If he grabs you before we can stop him? Then at least I went down fighting instead of hiding. Maya's eyes were fierce now. I've spent 8 months being afraid of this man. I'm done. I want my life back, even if that means taking a risk to get it. John studied her face for a long moment. He saw the fear there, but he also saw courage. Real courage. The kind that acknowledged the danger but moved forward anyway. Let me talk to Tom. See what he thinks. Tom's response surprised him. Actually, that might work. We've been trying to track Derek down, but he's staying hidden. If we create a situation where he thinks he has an opportunity, he might take it. And this time we'd control the circumstances. You're seriously considering this? I'm considering every option to end this situation safely. Look, I don't like using Maya as bait, but she's right that waiting isn't working either. Derek's getting more dangerous every day he's out there. Better to confront him on our terms than wait for him to pick his moment. They spent the next hour planning. Tom would coordinate with the state police to have officers positioned around town. Maya would go to the grocery store in the middle of the day when it was busy and public. John would be with her, but at a distance. They'd use Maya's appearance to draw Derek out, but in a place where he couldn't act without being seen and stopped. The key is making him think he has a chance, Tom explained. He needs to believe he can grab her. But the second he tries, we move in. Maya listened to all of this with her arms crossed, nodding occasionally. When Tom finished, she had one question. What if he doesn't come? Then we try again until he does, Tom said. Or until we find him another way. But my gut says he won't be able to resist. You showing up in public after hiding for days? That'll make him think you're vulnerable, that maybe you're giving up. He'll want to be the one to bring you back under his control.